Because this is Defend Public Education Now, I just want you to know that all of the students that I have that I'm dealing with, when they go and apply to charter schools will not take a lot of special education students because they're, quote, too many problems for them. They don't want to have these students that go to special day classes. They don't want the behavior issues. They want a homogenized group of students that fit their standards. So a lot of them will simply not take a lot of our special ed kids.
But I thought charter schools were required to select their students by lottery at random.
Well, they do. They choose their students lottery at random. But if they find out that the kid is, quote unquote, you know, he needs a specialized form of education, they're a lot less hesitant to take them in. And I know that a lot of the kids that we have, because they require special services and they require specialized teachers, the charter schools, that's a lot more money they've got to pay. And they're not willing to really necessarily do that. Yeah.
I think it's also important to point out that the lottery system itself is a filter because you have to enter the lottery in the first place, and so that requires an educationally interested parent just to enter the lottery. So there are some set of parents who never enter the lottery, and those are the students who go to public schools. So just the application process itself is a filter.
Right, that's true.
Can I ask another question real quick?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, how many more people are there like you on the OEA Executive Board that are, for lack of a better word, more of the anti-establishment type? And what hopes and focus do you think is coming up for Oakland Unified, OEA to deal with all the closures and the charters and all the terrible things that are kind of coming up for actually both of our districts?
Well, I wanted to say that as far as the Oakland Unified School District, the school board is majority Broad executive trained personnel that are on there. We do have one person who is very pro-public education, and she has been coming out and she was very supportive during the strike. We only have one person, because this was everybody in the union everybody in the district was marching. She had her bodyguard come out of the meeting first, and some took video cameras of actually the school board member grabbing a kindergarten teacher by the neck. She filed a lawsuit against her, but it was on tape. It was videotaped of this. So what I'm telling you is that I think when a large group of people are vociferously asking for change, most of the school board members feel very threatened, and to the point that this one particular school board member felt the necessity to hire a bodyguard, which we found really pretty absurd. But I think that the 2020, they're up for re-election. The school board is in 2020. So we're hoping, the union is hoping to elect people that will actually represent the teachers and the workers and school psychologists and everybody who works in Oakland, hopefully in the 2020 elections. Because
Thank you, Jocyelyn. And the other important struggle that has gone on in the state as far as the strikes and teacher strikes was in Los Angeles, which is one of the largest school districts in the country, one of the largest school districts in the country. And as we discussed earlier in our program, thousands of teachers have been unfairly removed from their positions and put in jails in Los Angeles. And PAR has been used as well in Los Angeles to target senior teachers particularly. And so this is a statewide issue, and this program PAR is something that we are going to shut down statewide because of its reactionary, discriminatory character. So our next speaker is Maria Quatlicue. Maria Quatlicue, and she's with the UTLA Educators Due Process Advocacy Committee and has been involved in a struggle to defend public teachers, including yourself, in the Los Angeles Unified School District. So welcome, Maria.
That I was fired. I'm very proud because I used to be so ashamed. I'm one of those senior veteran teachers that was attacked in the classroom. This is how this all started. And then I didn't know my rights when this was happening to me. And then I realized it was happening to other people. So what's happening, I think, since the Vergara people, this is a big political issue, and it comes down from the state. I worked at a partnership school, and if you don't know what that is, that's what Antonio Villagroso and all the privatizers, they invested a lot of money in these schools, and they wanted to control the school board. And this is like back in 2007-8. Well, they were not successful because he wanted to take the governor, he wanted the mayor's office to take over the school district, the board and choosing schools, and they didn't get that. But they did get a concession, which is called school choice. And school choice said that parents can choose different schools, you could have different models. And one of them was the partnership model. That's the one that was led by the CO Marshall Tuck, who ran for superintendent. Anyway, so he was in my classroom. So I got involved in this experimental school, and I was complaining a lot. But yet I was a veteran teacher. I had, my 30 years. Yet all of a sudden they were in my room telling me I was a terrible teacher. I know that's a personal thing, but then I realized that it was much bigger. They actually, how do I explain this? This is like, it was a very well orchestrated plan to get rid of veteran teachers in LA. After the Miramonte, you guys know about the Miramonte case, the case where Mark Burnett, the cookies and the semen was in the news, and it changed the laws, teacher dismissal laws. And people don't really, that was like a pivotal point, because prior to that, yes, they were harassing veteran teachers, but not with the help of the general counsel, not with the help of special extra personnel. And AB 215 was the legislation that was pushed to dismiss teachers and change the process. And in that process, a lot of teachers lost their rights or the time frame which they could defend themselves, and the schools were working full force. This legislation was also passed by, who supported this bill? CTA and all the same people supported the Vergara, the act, who are the organization? I forgot, something, well, you can see the funding came from the pro-charter people. And they also, the same people who were trying to get rid of seniority. So as the story goes, more and more teachers are getting attacked. But AB 215 allowed the school district to fund a special office. Now we didn't just have peer assistance and review, right, if you got below standards. Now we had an office where personnel were coming into your classroom. They actually created an office called the Certificated Support Certificated Support Evaluation Personnel, and they were there to assist. They came with the principal with their iPads, and they would come in your classroom. You knew they were up to something, and they were just writing everything down and scripting the kids and putting their iPads right next to the kid's face, and all of a sudden, you just knew that something was sinister about this, and it seemed wrong. But then when you called our union told us, you know what, they have a right to do that, because it's in the law if the principal has a concern. But before the law, the principal would come in on their own. But now they had extra help. So what this law allowed them to do was to create a whole office, and their whole job was just to write up veteran teachers. The majority of the teachers being dismissed or put in teacher jail are 55 or close to 55, are about to, because LA Unified, we're really lucky in the sense that our union voted for lifetime health care benefits. And that package is worth $250,000. But if they can fire you, if you get dismissed, if you resign, it's denied to you. So teachers don't know this, so they're under this duress. People are coming in the room, they're getting the worst evaluations they've ever gotten their whole life, and they know something's happening, but they have no one to go to, because every time you call our union, they say, well, they have a right to do that. And our union area reps started to change their roles. Their roles were no longer, I'm there to assist you, let me tell you what's going on, these are your rights, this is what can happen, this is nothing. They were like, you know, just call us, just pull anybody, you can just chapter chair, you can have anybody as long as they're not a member to represent you. And no one really knew the contract. And so I know this sounds terrible because I'm still a union supporter, and what I say, what's happening is we've got a whole group of veteran teachers that are stuck between a rock and a hard place. And one is our union is telling us, with this last union leadership, is telling us, don't criticize us, everything's okay, and then we feel like we're being ignored. They're not addressing the crisis. The veteran teachers are being attacked. They're being forced to resign. They're working under horrible conditions, incredible conditions, and with the PARs and the observers and the notes and the constant harassment, which is really what it is, workplace harassment. And then we have the anti-charter people coming in and telling us, the pro-charter people telling us, you know what, you don't have to pay your dues. And the union doesn't represent you and don't pay your dues, right? So Janice passed. So we have two fronts here. We have people saying, don't even be a union member, forget it, give it up. And then we have another group saying, you're kind of on your own right now. And our union, UTLA, has kind of taken a different agenda. They become more political organizers. Our area reps have organized for different causes, which is fine. This is great. We like that. I like that. But they've taken the same personnel that used to represent teachers, and now they're using that personnel for political issues. And that's okay, but nobody's representing the teachers. What it comes down to, you call the union, and they say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. The district already has enough data on you. You should just resign. Just give it up. And this is unheard of. And so what I'm saying is, there has to be a balance. So we created a committee at UTLA about, I think after Miramonte, called the Unjustly Housed Teachers, which teachers are removed from the classroom for frivolous things. And they wanted to expedite egregious charges because AB 215 says you could get rid of somebody, and after dismissal in 30 days, they have to have a hearing. No, well, not 30 days, it's 90 days. In 90 days, their trial should be set. You could still appeal your dismissal. And anyway, so they wanted to expedite those. But a lot of those charges are bogus. We have teachers who have lost their jobs because somebody gave them a Ricola. And then somebody said, well, that was NyQuil. Well, how do you give NyQuil to a kid in the school, 5th grade? And with so they trump up all these false charges. There's another crazy one where they say a teacher accidentally hit a kid with a pool noodle, and they're called egregious charges. And they're nothing that follow what was called the Morrison standard, which they use in the courts to decide, were you a sexual pervert, were you drunk, were you an addict, were you unfit, all the things that are harmful to children. None of those. They're really silly things. Well, why am I saying this? Because teachers have piles and piles of paper that principals and the certificate office of personnel have come to use as charges against you. And they're frivolous, but it would take a long time to defend those. As a teacher and a union member, I still believe in the union, but there's something we really have to do. Pay those union dues, but we need to really watch our union and make it stronger, change the leadership, and we need to organize within our union. Because if we don't organize within our union, it's just gonna run amok the way it is right now. And that's just, yeah, and so thank you. And I really think that's the only way we're gonna win this. So we're gonna need parent support, community support, but we also need to go out and all come to the same agreement. So my committee used to be ignored, but then we realized that this is this is more about due process. And nobody and UTLA wanted to join our committee because they thought we were like the Mark Burnett's, all the teachers in trouble, because a lot of the members were in teacher jail, and then some were disciplined, some were dismissed, some appealed their dismissals to the CTC, and some won their cases, some went back to, so there's a variety of people that are in this situation. So we actually realized we wanted to educate people. And so we changed the name of the committee to something that was a little more mainstream, but kind of implied that we were in trouble. And we called it the Educator Due Process Advocacy Committee, because we were all starting to feel, hey, we're not getting our due process. There's not enough time to defend ourselves. As public employees, there's not enough time to even know what's going on. A lot of the teachers, teachers work really hard all day long, and then they get a dismissal paper maybe in May, and then they get a Skelly in less than a week. Well, 6 days is not enough time to defend your career. And so a lot of people say LA Unified says it doesn't matter what you give them, what evidence, who you have, they're going to rubber stamp it and send it to the school board. But one of the biggest problems we have at LA Unified is that the school board votes to dismiss you without looking at your charges, but they say you're going to get your due process at the Office of Administrative Hearing. From my understanding, not many school districts go to the administrative office. It's a small, what do you call it, the Office of Administrative Hearings for people with credentials, like lawyers, doctors, any public employee who has a right to defend their job. Well, teachers normally, these things get looked at by the school board, and there's a lot of issues about the Brown Act violation that are going on at LA Unified. People are not being informed of when they're voting for their dismissal. They're not being told their rights, even the right to appear, or the right to even say they don't want to go to OH. So people don't even know their rights. And then we brought it up to UTLA. Well, who's to tell them this? And they're saying, well, a lawyer's supposed to tell them. And I go, in this day and age, we really need to be proactive, and we're recommending these classes for teachers so they would learn their rights. So there's a lot of things going on here at LA Unified and LAUSD and with UTLA. There's a faction that does not like union power right now because they've ignored our needs. Then we're moving with our group with we're not trying to go in-house and just vote on motions. We actually want our union, Al Caputo, to say there is a serious crisis of removing veteran teachers. And they just ignore it. But when you get hundreds of teachers are being dismissed a year, and they're isolated, some have committed suicide. And I know it sounds like I'm jumping around, but there's so many topics here when it comes to teacher abuse and how they go about it. They can accuse you of being a bad, unsatisfactory service, crimes, false crimes with no evidence, withholding evidence. Teachers get put in teacher jail, and they don't even get to know what those charges are until they're dismissed. There was one teacher who said he didn't even know who his accusers were or the evidence until he got a report from the CTC when he had to defend his credential. So this withholding of information, that just seems so unconstitutional, and that's what's going on in our district. So one of the things we're looking at is having the union. Of course, we're going to organize for making sure that the union recognizes this issue and that we start providing some kind of workshops on teacher dismissal so teachers know where they stand. We also want teachers to know what the Brown Act is about, a Skelly, what leaves, what are medical leaves, how do they affect your health care, your CalSTRS time, calculating. There's a lot of things we need to do to defend our livelihood, and it's not really happening at UTLA. Right now, if you were to go there right now, they'll probably have a workshop on, community organizing, showing parents how, to speak up at councils, or joining the PTA, or how to voice an anti-charter co-location, which is great. That's all good. But we're feeling like they're not addressing the needs of certain teachers right now. at all. And that's where this gets kind of scary, because a lot of union members who were in the outside. Now, technically, I just retired because, like I said, I was asked to, dismissed, and then, of course, I had to reach an agreement because they were going to blackmail me with what I've earned, and I earned a lifetime health care package and my CalSTRS and all my credentials. So, of course, you kind of get blackmailed into like, well, you know, if you lose this trial, you're going to lose everything, your credential and this. They just blackmail you. And I mean, you know, I have a son who's going to college, so I had to decide, what the heck am I going to do? And so then I did sign those papers, and I kind of wish I didn't even know what they were. But when you sign a settlement agreement, there's like non-disclosed disclosures, but there's also a lot of things in there that seem unconstitutional, like I can't step foot on campus. I'm not even a criminal. The only thing they asked me said that they didn't like the way I passed out papers, or I didn't state the standard correctly, or I didn't corrective feedback, or I failed to follow my lesson plan for the agenda on the board, or you know, just things that don't really matter at the end. It's, well, how did the kids learn? I didn't follow the script with Eureka Math. Even though my kids, you know, I was a grade level chair, and I shared things, and I've been a mentor teacher, and you know, so there's so many things that just inconsistent. And I even received a grant to be get my administrative credentials. So everything was going fine for me until I started in social media. And I should not have, I know this is stupid of me, I just thought I had free speech. I guess I did, but I thought I could go on Twitter and say I didn't like Marshall Tuck, and I work for the partnership. I thought I didn't like Antonio Villagrosa stating in front of children, oh, tell your parents about me because I'm going to be the next governor of California. And he tells his little kids, and it was like, oh my gosh. Or you get the guy from Mercury Insurance there giving checks, and just everybody's like, there's something really fishy and ugly about the partnership. They're always selling things. Oh, this is the next ST Math. This is Engage New York. This is, what are we doing? Reading A to Z, and we're always buying all these packages of new curriculum, and somebody's profiting from them. And us teachers, like, we already know how to teach. You know, we've been teaching many, many years, and you're telling us that we have to use these materials. And we're like, how are we going to do this? How do you fit all these things into a school day? Also, you know, they're young, so we don't like kids on the computer all day. You know, kids used to be excited about computers, but now when you say, oh, you got to go do your ST Math, you got to do, what's the other, Lexia reading, whatever it is, they're like, oh, I don't want to. Can't I just, and this is the funny part, my kids are so great, can't I just read a book? And I thought that was so funny. So my kids, so they just wanted to be a kid. And because, you know, and then you would get written up as a teacher because your kids didn't spend enough time. Oh, you know, this child's supposed to be on the computer for, you know, 3 hours this week. And, you know, what happened? I go, well, you had an assembly. You know, we had some kind of show or something happened, grade level meeting. And so, but that's another thing. So what we're really saying here is that we're kind of working isolated right now. I'm a retiree now, but I'm mentoring a new chair. We also have new people helping us. I did talk to Jackie Goldberg, the school board member, and I talked to her before election, and I helped in her campaign. And I mentioned we really need to investigate the teacher dismissal process. Something does not seem right at all. There's something kind of seems sinister. And then I ran into somebody else that I met who's a professor. I won't name her because she wants to work privately, but she's working with me, and she's working with policy and research. I also met, and through this, as I've been going out and speaking and helping teachers at other schools, kind of as a coach or consultant as they're going through the dismissal process, I guess I'm doing what my area rep should have been doing all along for them. We're trying to figure out a plan, a gathering not just data, but testimonials, and so we can change policy and we can make that recommendation, and not just to Jackie Goldberg, but even actually getting involved in changing dismissal laws in California, because people are really needing to amend rewrite AB 215, because it's not just hurting people with egregious charges. People, that's fine, get rid of the Mark Burnett's, okay? In fact, seems like a farce too, because LA Unified knew for 10 years parents were complaining about them. And yet, the people who are really paying for this are regular teachers, you know, who didn't do anything, who love their jobs, and who developed their own curriculum, but somehow are not towing the line, the nice corporate pro-charter, let's profit as much as we can from each school budget. We're the ones who are usually out now. As I'm getting back, I know I was thinking about what am I going to say, and I wrote little things in the note, and let me get back to where I was. So, see, I have a little bit of ADHD. I mean, I can say, you know, it's hard for me to remember things because we go from one place to the other. So I'm saying on one hand, we're trying to change policy within UTLA, within the school board, and any academics or people who help us on the outside. And we're trying to provide training and workshops for teachers so they know about what can happen to you if you get recommended for dismissal. Right now, there doesn't seem to be any labor classes or anything for public school teachers. And since I've been working with many teachers, and it's about 3 years now, I guess, we developed some materials for our teachers. A dismissal flow chart, what things check off, check your credential, check your personnel record, estimate your CalSTRS, what your wages would be if you were to continue working, and to weigh your pros and cons and really look at the numbers, see where you are financially, because this can ruin you. Once you get dismissed, you can get a what we call group legal services attorney through CTA and UTLA, but the problem is this: they only take you to settle. Very few really want to fight for you. A lot of teachers say, well, can I do something before I get dismissed? And they're like, no, we won't even get an attorney until you're dismissed. And it's kind of like, you know, like the lawyers and third world cops. You come after all the bodies are down on the ground, and that's what's happening. You don't come as a paramedic to help the wounded. You come after they've been slaughtered to clean up and just, you know, send the bodies to the morgue, sort of. So we're trying to be like, we don't want that anymore. So teachers are learning certain things. You don't have to go to the Office of Administrative Hearings. You can actually let them fire you. You know, you could appeal a dismissal. You can ask for a right to a trial, and then you can actually go to Superior Court, because then I guess we were talking, the preponderance of evidence is harder for the district. It's 51-49 at the Office of Administrative Hearings, but it's like 70-30 in Superior Court. And you have a jury. And it's going to cost more. The union will not pay for it, but that's the only way people can actually fight and actually get damages. Some people have been successful that way. It's very expensive, but some people don't know that these are choices. So we have some teachers who have done that. It's a long process, learning your rights. Why UTLA right now, some of our area reps, we have emails, we have a lot of evidence of area reps writing teachers and saying, you know what, I think you should just settle. The district is offering you a generous package. If you go now, you'll get X, Y, and Z. But what people don't know is that there are any egregious charges on your dismissal, they're going to send something to CTC anyways, and you're going to be fighting for credentials 2 to 3 years down the line anyways, and you're pretty much mud. I feel like I can't teach again because we feel so destroyed. A lot of teachers feel emotionally destroyed. We also want UTLA, we want to start to create a network of free resources for teachers, because when you're not getting a paycheck and that unemployment check is not cutting it and you don't have enough money, you're going to need mental health care. For number one, everybody comes through this very damaged. It's very hard to get up. It's taken me years, and I finally feel a little bit normal. I don't know, I finally feel like, hey, I'm back again. I'm not like oversaturated mentally. But we have some teachers that seem like they've been damaged forever. You know, the way they talk, lack of sleep, they're paranoid. There's a lot of things that happen when you're being bullied. And we need to create a network, I think, as unions to help these employees. And that's what, one of the reasons is not just group legal services, it's education about your due process, and it's also getting the people the correct mental health care and maybe workshops for teachers. So I don't know, I came late because I came from LA today because I drove this morning because it was a long week. We had the funeral. My mom passed away after 8 years of long-term care, and we had a funeral for her on Tuesday, and it just was like a whirlwind. But I knew I wanted to be here. I don't know all of you or where you're coming from, but I thought it was really important to meet people like yourselves and share our ideas of how we can make our union stronger, change policy, and not give up this union right. We're labor for labor, or sometimes we're free labor for labor, and a lot of us are volunteering. And the situation in LA Unified is still continuing. Teachers are being dismissed. The reason we just started doing the workshops is because we were driving all over town to help teachers. And I'd be going to Rancho Cucamonga or Thousand Oaks or the beach. I've been going everywhere, and I'm like, people say, you could just get a job. I go, well, I want to get a job, but this is like the core of me. What's right is right, and people are in distress, and I know how I felt, and I don't want anybody to feel like that. When you can't sleep or eat, or you're terrified, you go to your classroom and you're like with your kids and you're trying to be happy and give them just protect them from these, people, but it's really hard, So like I said, there's teacher jails, there's workplace bullying, but we need to know our rights. Teachers don't know they have a right to appeal dismissal. They don't know they have a right to a paid suspension. They don't know they have a right to ask for more time for their Skelly, or they have a time for maybe even a Skelly review. LA Unified does not give a Skelly review, so they never tell you how they arrived at their decision. It's then we talk about corruption. To dismiss a teacher costs between $300,000 to $500,000. And I'm like, this is really corrupt, because if a teacher is struggling and they're maybe 3 years from retirement, if I was an administrator, and I have my paperwork, but I thought I would get them a full-time TA, so they can have somebody help them. That's $17,000 a year. Why spend, why not put that extra money and enrich your school, help that teacher who has some needs some medical accommodations. There's some simple things we can do. Instead of spending, what is that, like $50,000 or a little over, versus $500,000. And then it comes back to is there something corrupt going on at LA Unified? Why do we have so many lawyers, general counsel, people? Who's profiting from this? Somebody's making money from this teacher dismissal. And if you really look at it, if people do their homework at the very beginning, we can stop the process. The teacher needs assistance, if the teacher needs accommodations, if the teacher needs a leave. But the fact that they make false accusations and terrorize senior teachers who've given their career, it's awful. I didn't even have a retirement party because I thought I wasn't retired, but I thought, yuck, it feels ugly, it feels dirty. You just feel like, I love my job, and yet I couldn't even walk out with respect. And, but we have dignity, and, I feel like this is why I need to do this. And so we also created a Facebook page with a bunch of resources, and that's how we started contacting people. But I think we need more resources. So if the more people across the state, if we could get a hold of all the union leadership across the state, because then I know they're going through the same process, we could just create a whole committee on teacher dismissal. Because I really think there's another teacher too who wants to meet with Tony Thurman on this issue. But I think we need to organize before we do that. And if we can have at least one, somebody from every, union in the state, that would be ideal, because I know it's happening everywhere. How it's happening, we don't all know, or teachers don't want to speak up. But if we do that, that's very powerful. And we bring on what we want him to do. In fact, I even gave him money for his campaign. I'm wondering, why did I do that? One of my jokes is this: we wanted you because I had actually met him because people were campaigning for him through UTLA and some other friends, and I'm like, he wanted to know all about the partnership because I knew Marshall Tuck personally in my room and what he wanted and what he said and things that happened, and his campaign managers that call me, I want to know this, that, and then all of a sudden, what does he do? He appoints Ryan Smith. You know Ryan Smith? He worked for the Partnership Schools of Los Angeles. And he appointed him to the council when they, after, the teachers asked for a moratorium on charter schools, the school board, of course, they didn't have the power to do that, so we're going to recommend it to our legislators. So they do that. But then what does Tony Thurman do? He elects a pro-charter panel. They were outweighed. And who's on this panel? Ryan Smith. And I'm like, that's like, what was the point of that? We should just voted for Marshall Tuck. It would have, the same thing would have happened. So it's kind of like uncomfortable when the Democrats and our candidates are not really looking at real teacher issues. It's uncomfortable when Bernie Sanders came to the leadership. I didn't get to go to the conference. I didn't really hear the whole speech, but I know he came. And I did see Alice Orozco, vice president of our union, state that, I want to welcome, Bernie Sanders. He came to the leadership. And then he says, by the way, I want to say this is not an endorsement. And the whole room just went quiet. I go, what do you mean it's not an endorsement? And then later on, we find out Bernie Sanders requested to speak there. So if he requested to speak there, then that means he knows there's something, I'm thinking, because, he must know there's something fishy going on, because we know that, yes, they want to unionize certain charter schools, but UTLA back 2009, I think Randy Weingarten went to our leadership conference and was stating with Duffy, rest in peace, you guys know our union leader who passed away. And I forgot his first name. I don't know why I forgot his first name, so I'm blanking out. Mr. Duffy passed away just recently. But they got on stage and they were kind of like, well, charters are coming and everything, but you know what? We're going to take this stance. If you can't beat them, join them. That beat them and join them is two different things, because you brought them in and now you're fighting them, 10 years later. They're the ones who, they, how do I say it? They opened that Pandora box, and we really need to question them on those issues, and that's what I intend to do. We also started outside, because we're retiring, as UTLA members. Some of us are working on these policies and things within the House, and we're getting chapter chairs and different people to look at this, because a big election is coming up, so we really need a candidate that's going to be pro-member. Was the other comment I was going to say? No, I lost my thought again. I don't know. This is like, maybe this is showing my thing. We really need to get a candidate is pro-teacher. And then where was I, you guys? I don't know if you're, I think you guys been here all day long, huh? Yeah. So we want a candidate is pro-teacher. And I'm okay for the organizing, but use PACE money for that, maybe make an organization. So there's some recommendations we might to UTLA, but we want our reps to be our reps. Talk about House, more things. House divided, leadership conference, something else I learned, this was interesting. Our UTLA staff members are wanting the teachers to support them because they're gonna cut their benefits, and they're gonna cut their benefits and certain things. And we're like, wait a minute, that's crazy. If the area reps, the staff is upset within the union, then we really have some serious problems there that need to be addressed. And I think this all kind of is part of this bullying. I think it was meant to unravel. It was somebody's plan for it to unravel. It just didn't happen consequently. It happened with a purpose. So that's why I'm here to share that. And I know some of you have to go because I, been talking, but if you want, I'll give you my name, and if you have any ideas for me that I can use to help the teachers or resources, or if you know PAR well and want to teach teachers what their rights are to the PAR process, we created what's called the, this is where I was getting at. If we can't work within UTLA, we're going to work outside UTLA, and we created with something called the Los Angeles Labor Group, and we're there to help teachers when their union cannot answer their questions, and that's kind of where we're at. But we need to demand that our union that they do answer their questions. But in the meantime, we want to catch these people who need our help. And then by providing education, so I'm not driving all over town and our other members aren't driving helping teachers one-to-one. We want teachers to know everything they need to know about how to protect their profession. Not just movements and organizations, but how to protect your own profession, yourself, first your individual. Like that, what's that thing? Maslow's laws of, the union right now seems like it's working on top of the pyramid, and we need to start working on the bottom. We really lost that understanding where we are with so self-care, and that's where I'm at right now. So I want to thank you guys, and I know I took a lot of time, but yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, I hope we're moving. Oh yeah. So what I wanted to say is we're no longer a committee, we've become a movement, okay? So we are the Educator Due Process Committee, but we're also LA Labor Group, and we're there for educators.
Okay, thank you very much, Maria.
Okay,
We really appreciate the long trip that you and your friend came to San Francisco, because people need to know what's going on in Los Angeles and the lessons you've had in defending the teachers and their struggle. There any comments or questions? What? Yes, back there.
Yeah, can you explain a little to me? I'm so beginner. There was a really good LA teacher movement, maybe about in 2007 or 8, maybe it was 2010 or 11, something like that. And what you're describing is they all moved up into a political realm, and that left you behind as regular teachers not being able to get services in the union that you needed help with. And what time period was that? Because there was a really good movement in LA going on, and I know that it's kind of dwindled and died out about 2000.
Well, I've been, I was an employee of LA Unified for 30 and a half years, so I was a chapter chair during those years. It was John Duffy. I think that it happened when school choice came in. Somewhere along the line, it was Duffy came, and then Warren Fletcher came as a union leader, and I think people were telling me that's when there was some division within the union. The union started running on slates, like union power, different things. And I think that's kind of when it happened. You vote all one way or the other way, and then the slate, you didn't really have a chance to question their positions. Or they would have a board of director meetings, and certain meetings would be closed to members, and some people were complaining that there was a lack of transparency within the union. There was also issues on how we vote in the House of Reps. They still use the card system, and everybody was saying, well, why can't we just use a technology system? And there's all of these issues about how there was a shift in power. and teachers and members and chapter chairs got less training on how to defend teachers. So I do think it has been the last, 2 terms, I think last 8 years, I'm thinking. I'm not saying that, I think there's a lot of good that came out of our struggle and the strike, but I also think that a lot of teachers feel in LA Unified that it ended too quickly. Just as we got momentum, we're getting other unions to join us, like the nurses and the fire department, and we were out in the rain there. I think people were disappointed that they settled within, we heard that they had settled in the morning, that they were up in the wee hours. There was some real concern that politicians were involved at the bargaining table, like Eric Garcetti, and, his wife has ties to Brutner. It's like, wait a minute, that's not who are the negotiators? And why did they bring these politicians to the table? And why was the decision made overnight? And when people are tired and under duress. So a lot of people were upset too because we didn't get to read what they signed. So I think it was raining. They announced an agreement at 10 a.m. Then we were told, you need to vote for this contract at school sites between, I think, 3 and 6. And then it was like a blind vote. And we're like, well, wait a minute. We didn't even get a copy of this. We didn't get a fine, and a lot of teachers were just tired of the strike. They signed, they trusted their union. Oh, we got a good deal on this and that and that. But a lot of us teachers who, we're old school and we're like reading all the details and go, what about these perp charges? They dropped 6 perp charges? What were those about? And the teachers are signing away, and some of these were really valid perp charges, Of course, some were about, our superintendent, Austin Butner, speaking as a negotiator, disclosing things, or trying to bargain on live TV, those things. But some of them were more concerned to the teachers. It was about, teachers being, what was the word? Unfairly, how do you say it? It had to do with these things that we're talking about, teacher jail, and it had to do with unfair dismissal, teachers' rights being violated, and those were dropped. So I can't get to the specific numbers, but that's what we're saying about the lack of transparency, the way things were done in a rapid way, and people even right now are very concerned because there's supposed to be no retributions or no retaliation, and that's exactly what happened. A lot of the subs had continuity pay, when you get your continuous pay, and they broke that service, and so then they said you don't get that bonus. Or they were teachers, they were half-time, and they took the days off, and they said, well, next year you have to work full-time. So a lot of things happen, and they acted like it was business as usual. They counted those strike days as if you were just absent, and that's not exactly what our concept of no retaliation, so that was a little bit of a mess. So there's a lot of little things that are I don't know how to say it, uncomfortable for us. But we're not going to give up being union members, of course. But so that's what
I was going to add one point about the union leadership bureaucracy supporting charter schools, because Randy Weingarten, who's the president of the AFT, actually helped support Green Dot Los Angeles. She had a partnership with Green Dot Charter Schools in Los Angeles. And guess who was head of the Green Dot Charter Schools in Los Angeles? Tucker. Tuck. Marshall Tuck. So here the union president helps bring in a charter school chain to Los Angeles. How could that be? Except you accept privatization. You're pushing privatization. If you push charter schools, you're pushing privatization. So we have a union leadership, including the UTLA leadership, that are pushing privatization. As I understand it, there are charter school operators on the board of the UTLA. So you have a conflict of interest, but when you set up a 2-tier school system where you have what they call a light contract at the Green Dot schools with a regular public school contract, you're setting up a double a two-tier system, which is used by management to weaken the teachers' system, the protection of teachers and the benefits. That's exactly what is happening with the acceptance of the charters by the UTLA, the CTA, and the CFT leadership, and the national leaderships. In fact, at the last NEA convention, there was no debate about a national campaign for a moratorium on charters. So here, charters were just West Virginia Republicans, in punishment of the West Virginia teachers who went on strike, passed a bill bringing in charters in West Virginia. Well, you would think that the National EA Convention would say, we're going to fight this nationally. No, no. So in my view, in our view, it's a one-sided class war. They're fighting the war against us, and they're winning. Charters are continuing to grow in California, and the CTA had this rally, which they did not mobilize for in Sacramento. They had about 2,000 or 3,000 people. They have 325,000 members. I understand they didn't even campaign in Los Angeles to get a large delegation. They go up to Sacramento to demand the legislature pass these reforms for more transparency in the charter schools, and they couldn't even get that. They couldn't get these legislators who they'd put in office and the governor to pass this legislation. The governor personally intervened to water down the charter transparency laws. So this is a union that spent all this money, resources on Governor Newsom, and then he waters down their reform charter transparency law. It's the political bankruptcy, really, of the CTA and the CFT leadership. They're politically bankrupt because they've got nothing to show for all the things that they've done. If you can't even get minor reforms, which I don't think are going to solve the cancer, we've got cancer going, you're not going to be able to really confront the issue. And that's why we are for repealing the charter school law to eliminate all public funding to privately run schools. That's the only way to cut the head of the snake off, which is destroying public education. Last point, another issue with the pension fund, and this is a serious issue. The charter schools are not paying as public schools into the pension fund. So CalSTRS is underfunded. So what they're telling the teachers now is you're not going to get a pay increase, your money has to go into the pension fund because it's underfunded. Well, you know, again, you have all these billionaires in California, you have all this wealth in California, and they're cutting the pay of the teachers? This is what they're saying. And the CTA and CFT are not fighting the charters on the fact that they're not paying into the teachers' pension fund. Why is that? The charters are against public pensions. Caliber School in West Contra Costa County voted, they said, with the agreement of the West Contra Costa School Board to go to a 401k. Now, these teachers have a high turnover in charter schools, more than in public schools. What does that mean? It means that they lose the money. They lose their 401k money in a lot of cases. And the owners of these charters get that money. It's another grab, financial grab by the charter school industry. So we're talking about attacks on all angles, all sides, a full-scale attack by the billionaires, by the corporations, and by the Democratic Party. So that is something that we're up against and why it's very difficult. And as Maria said, trying to organize an individual teacher, trying to survive this onslaught, the harassment, the bullying, the fact you can't get any action from your union, you can't even get information, it drives teachers crazy. That's why teachers have committed suicide in California. And frankly, their blood is on the hands of this union leadership. There is no campaign against workplace bullying in California in the schools. There's no statewide campaign against workplace bullying in schools. By the CTA. There's no campaign against co-locations, linking up all the co-location struggles. In fact, I went to a co-location fight in Los Angeles. UTLA is not to be found. You know, they could organize and have a list of all the co-locations statewide and be fighting it statewide and educating people and bringing people together to fight the co-locations. That is what a union does, a real union. And I think that that's the problem. We don't have real unions. We have people that are collecting money and saying that they're a union, but when it comes down to protecting teachers, and the same thing happens with the SEIU. The SEIU is spending money, Fight for 15 or this other thing or other campaign. Their own members are getting screwed. Their own members are losing their jobs. Their own members are getting bullied. But they don't seem to have the wherewithal to defend their own members. If you can't defend your own members, how are you going to defend anybody else? That's a real question. If you can't fight for your own members, how are you going to defend anyone else?
And I agree with you, and I think the union leadership they had, I asked if I could do some workshops at the UTLA leadership, and I was told by, I think, one of them, Cecile, Merritt Cruz, I guess she's the one who's going to run to be the next union power candidate as president in the next election. She told me, I'm sorry, that doesn't fit into our theme. Our theme is public schools, or get our schools back, or defend public schools, or something like that. Similar to what we're trying to do, but they're not really trying to do that. Anyways, and I said, well, you can't have public schools without public school teachers. And she just like ignored me. But then I'm like, I was a little like put off because they did that the year before. We wanted to do a workshop too on teachers' rights during a dismissal procedure and what you can and cannot do and things. And I was told, oh no, this doesn't fit our theme. They threw out our program again. And they said, oh, well, it doesn't fit with their theme. We're talking about preparing for a strike. So the whole leadership conference the year before. So it seems that our union has an agenda, and you can't rock that boat. If you don't fit, your one little piece doesn't fit in there, you don't have a voice. Well, I think we need to get that back, and our theme should be take our union back. And that's it, not just at public schools. We'll start, take our union back, then we could get our schools back. And that's the only way it's going to work. And I also had a problem with membership. We don't even know who all our UTLA members are. I asked if, is there a database? A lot of teachers, when they get dismissed, they get reinstated, then they have pay back their, they get their dues deducted for, and back, they go back whatever months they were not paid. And yet there's really no system. And I'm like, that's crazy. We pay so much money to the union. Why don't we have a database of our membership? And why are we even more, if we really cared, why not have, I campaigned for Jackie Goldberg, and we were canvassing, and then there was this great program, and it tells you like how everybody voted, who to knock, what door, and had these little pins of all these communities. And I'm going, oh my gosh, we could easily do that with our schools. How many senior teachers, not personal information, but just data. How many senior teachers, how many older teachers, how many teachers are getting suspended, how many teachers. We have those stats. Then we can see where they're really targeting the teachers. There's so many little things that we can do just using, some programming. So everybody knows how to do that. But then you have to get into like, they have to help us, That's a big problem. There's also a problem with not just the charters and the co-location, but I agree with you. There's something sinister happening, but I think what the union is doing right now is, yes, it's nice, and, yes, they did get everybody out in the rain, but I think that the teachers kind of trusted their union, and they were out there because they believed in their union. And then when they came back, they were like, well, what happened? We were offered the same 6%. And I guess nobody wants to be, seem ungrateful. But they paid a lot. And also, it was the teachers who changed the momentum of that strike. They're the ones who started saying no to charter schools, not just no to a moratorium. It was no to charter schools. We want more transparency. And I don't even think that was Alex Caputo's message. The teachers changed the message. So I think there is a disconnect between the membership and the idealism, and you just got to love elementary school teachers. Their heart is so big. They can even see the good in front of, in a wolf, but not that there's a wolf, because I don't know him personally. I'm sure he has, anyways, doesn't matter. The whole point is that we see good and bad sometimes. We got to stop doing that. We really do. Currently, yes, they do have a homeless program right now, and they do have different services. I know some have been cut. They were going to cut some. That's not my specialty, but I know.